I'd like you to picture this. You've been watching Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and after an hour of people getting mauled by rabbits, weird meta-humor, Black Plague jokes, and a very accurate depiction of French people, something weird happens. Loud music erupts, both grandiose and mysterious, as a ship emerges from the fog and floats itself to the shore on the few remaining lights, last survivors of the group you've started this journey with. As silly as the rest of the movie was, it suddenly takes a break to let you bathe in what a more respectful version of the story could have felt like. The powerful score and the unmistakable Arthurian imagery do their part. For a moment, you'd almost forget the tone of the entirety of the picture up to that point. The quest was long, arduous, and now her heroes are closer to their goals than ever. Of course, the movie undercuts that moment right afterward, and ends in the most anticlimactic way possible. All that setup was only for the joke to land harder. Yet, the feeling remains. That short scene was what the whole movie could have been like. A serious, grandiose retelling of the Arthurian legends, shrouded in mists and mysteries. That movie could still be made. I'd also like you to imagine that just 1 year prior, you've made your own movie.
Zardoz speaks to you.
Sadly, I'm pretty sure that this thought experiment is nowhere near the true story, but I feel like it's a good way to introduce John Boorman's 1981 movie, Excalibur. My goal today won't be to analyze this movie, nor is it to sell you on why you should watch it, but to tell you that you could watch it, maybe, if it seems like your kind of thing. I know I like it. I won't be held accountable if you don't. So, this is... Excalibur would be a hard movie for me to sell anyway, since why I love it doesn't really rely on a list of qualities, but instead on a weird combination of disjointed elements that shouldn't fit together but somehow do. A serious version of Monty Python and the Holy Grail made by the director of Zardoz might indeed be the fastest way to describe this movie, but there's more to it than that. I don't think I would be able to make it justice with well-constructed points, so I'm not gonna pretend this is what I'm doing. This will be more of a rambling mess than an essay. Somehow, I feel like it's the best way to try to translate the weird moods this movie puts me into. And yeah, that's also far more convenient to write. So, where to begin? Maybe the best choice would be the first thing that pops out. The visuals. I remember watching the movie when I was 11 years old, and somehow already reminiscing certain scenes. I must have seen at least part of it at a younger age, and some scenes just stuck with me long after I did. A lot of the imagery might indeed be a bit too hard to bear for a kid. The movie isn't afraid to show the filth of the Dark Ages or the ugliness of death. The battle scenes are also mostly improvised, with the characters hitting each other bluntly and struggling to find their footing in their heavy suits of plate armor. A far cry from the mental image a kid would have of chivalrous combat. On the complete other side of the aesthetic spectrum from this kind of gritty realism, the movie also features a lot of the very kitsch imageries that would be expected from a low-budget early 80s film, not to mention a few trippy, borderline psychedelic moments. Rather than clashing, those very distinct visual elements manage to create a great contrast, with literal knights in shining armor covered in mud, blood, and sweat from their struggle. Unifying the whole visual package are the mythical elements, an ever-present green lighting accompanying the use of magic, the abundance of mists, and the gorgeous Irish natural setting. This kind of contrast can also be found in the actors' performances. Most of them come from live theatre, not cinema. This can obviously be explained by budget concerns, but it might as well be deliberate, since it adds a lot to the movie. This creates kind of camp in some of the scene.
Rise, father, please. I was your son before I became your king. If I am king.
You are king. The more so because you're not my son. And I am not your father.
But at the same time, it also gives a sort of gravitas to the dialogues.
The land from here to the sea shall be yours, if you enforce the king's will!
Gravitas. I think I like that word. Should use it more often. One character in particular, both in his performance and writing, really stands out. Merlin. While everyone else is dead serious, he goes through the entire thing with a smirk on his face and seems to be having the time of his life. He's basically a kind of Gandalf in the sky with diamonds, or High Dumbledore, whichever way you prefer to phrase it. While this can be a bit silly at times, it also helps a lot in selling him as more of an agent of destiny than a human being. Since despite the fact that he seems to be pulling things out of his ass all the time, everyone else listens to him, and is right to do so. Like all decent fantasy movies, Excalibur has an excellent soundtrack. Trevor Jones managed to create a recognizable and beautiful original score. This was no easy task considering that the other tracks are from Richard Wagner and Carl Orff. On a side note, if you happen to listen to The Death of Siegfried on YouTube, only a third of the comments are the usual hyper-praise / music was better before that you can find below any classical piece. The second third being mostly taken by quotes from Excalibur. Yeah, about the last third though, I'm afraid it's mostly anti-Semitic and white supremacist dog whistles. Wagner had a bit of a following in Germany during the 1930s and 1940s, and apparently it's still something that's going on. I tend to want to distance the piece of shit that was the man from his music, but it's getting harder and harder to do so. Back to the movie. The use of classical music, especially coming from operas, goes hand in hand with the actors' performances to help sell that gravitas I mentioned earlier, giving a really dramatic vibe to the whole movie. Jones's score, while also playing a part in this, helps a lot with the more out there elements of the movie.
Ride!
And it's also pretty sure, regarding the score, that at least one person involved watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Narratively, the movie is one of the most straightforward adaptations of the Arthurian legends to the screen. Of course, it's hard to talk about how faithful it is to the source material, since the mythos has multiple authors and goes all over the place, but it relies heavily on Le Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory, and doesn't try to reinvent the wheel or to go into fanfiction territory. Still, it remains a bit cryptic as most of the supernatural elements are either presented in a very matter-of-fact way by the characters,
such power that if you were to see it whole and all complete in a single glance, it would burn you to cinders.
Where is it?
It is everywhere. It is everything.
or don't get explained at all. It's not a flaw in my book, as I like my magic to stay, well, magic.
Wow, like lightning! Yes, that's it.
And the common understanding of the legend bridges the gap anyway. What could have been done better, though, is the pacing, as the movie jumps jarringly through time and the middle section drags a bit too long. All those very different elements mixed together might seem a bit jarring at first, but again, I feel it's for the better. The confusion of it all helps selling the fantastical nature of the story, while the dark elements and the gravitas give it importance. The Arthurian legends are a fragmented mess of cobbled together stories, but one that has been part of the collective unconscious for centuries, and there is a lot of common ground between each individual's understanding of it. Excalibur gives us a retelling that focuses on that common ground, while remaining cryptic enough as not to break the mythical aspect of the story. It treats the mythos respectfully and tries to give it enough gravitas to maintain its timeliness. So, where am I going with that? Well, I think there are 3 types of reactions to this movie. Some will find it boring, some will find it silly, and some will find themselves captured by its weird beauty. I've been all 3 of those viewers, sometimes in the same viewing, which is why I cannot sincerely just recommend you to go watch it. But what I can tell you is that if you feel like there is a chance you might fall in the 3rd category, you should definitely give it a try. The Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones have proven that there is a place for well-made fantasy stories on screen. But I feel that we've lost in the process this weirder approach to the treatment of mythos, and with it a bit of the magic inherent to the genre. We might not all need to see Excalibur or, I don't know, Conan the Barbarian, but I would love for more creators to go on the same road instead of trying to milk the same cow, again and again. Oh, and also that's where the channel name comes from.
Looking at the cake's like looking at the future. Until you've tasted it, what do you really know?
And then, of course, it's too late.